"This is your only chance, human. Act now or regret forever," declared his alien co-worker. Nathan Reacher stood at the viewport of his personal starship, the Fortune's Folly, admiring the crystalline spires of New Celestis' skyline as they glittered in the light of the binary sunset. His muscular frame was reflected in the transparent aluminum, and he adjusted the collar of his signature leather jacket, a relic from old Earth that had seen him through countless adventures. The ship's AI chimed softly. "Incoming transmission from an unknown source. Captain, shall I patch it through?" "Go ahead, EVA," Nathan replied, running a hand through his dark hair. A holographic display materialized before him, showing coordinates and cryptic symbols that made his heart race. This was it, the kind of lid he'd been waiting for. The message contained references to an ancient temple on a barely charted world, or promising treasures beyond imagination. As he began decoding the message, another notification pinged. "Captain," Eva announced, "I'm detecting a familiar energy signature approaching our docking bay." Nathan's lips curved into a knowing smile. "Let me guess, the Azure Shadow?" "Correct. It appears Miss Gina has received similar information." Right on cue, the door to his ship's bridge hissed open. Gina Athara strode in, her form-fitting silver and black attire leaving little to the imagination. Her light blue skin seemed to shimmer in the artificial lighting, and her long cobalt blue hair cascaded down her back like a waterfall. "Well, well," she purred, leaning against the doorframe. "Fancy meeting you here, human." Nathan turned, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "Gina? Still breaking into other people's ships, I see." "Please," she scoffed, sauntering closer. "Your security systems practically invited me in. Besides, she produced a data crystal from somewhere in her revealing outfit. I thought you might want to compare notes." "And why would I do that?" Nathan asked, though he couldn't help but admire how her corset hugged her curves. "Because," Gina said, her violet eyes twinkling with mischief. "I bet my intel is better than yours. The Temple of the Forgotten Gods? Ring any bells?" Nathan kept his expression neutral, but internally his pulse quickened. She had the same lead. "Never heard of it." "Liar," she laughed, the sound like chimes in the wind. "Your poker face needs work, Reacher. I can see right through you, and not just because this outfit is distracting." He chuckled despite himself. "You know, one of these days, that overconfidence is going to get you into trouble." That's rich coming from the man who once outran a quantum torpedo in an asteroid field. "That was different," Nathan protested. "I had a plan." "You had luck," Gina corrected, moving to the star chart display. "But luck won't be enough for this job." She inserted her data crystal, and a holographic map bloomed to life between them. "The temple's defenses are legendary. Ancient tech, deadly fauna, the works." Nathan studied the map, noting the complex series of tunnels and chambers. "And let me guess, you want to work together?" "Don't be absurd," Gina said, but her smile held a hint of something more than just professional rivalry. "I just thought I'd give you fair warning before I claim the prize for myself." "How considerate of you," Nathan replied dryly. "I am nothing if not sporting." She retrieved her crystal and headed for the door, her hips swaying hypnotically. "See you, planet-side human. Try not to get eaten by anything before I can properly beat you to the treasure." After she left, Nathan turned back to the viewport, shaking his head with a grin. "EVA, plot a course for these coordinates and run a full scan on our systems. I want to know exactly how she got in this time." "Of course, Captain, though I feel compelled to point out that you seem to enjoy these encounters more than you let on. Just plot the course, EVA." As the ship's engines hummed to life, Nathan reviewed the temple schematics one more time. Something about this job felt different, bigger than their usual treasure hunts. He had a feeling his rivalry with Gina was about to enter uncharted territory. The game was on, and this time, the stakes were higher than ever. The twin suns of Nexus Prime cast long shadows across the temple ruins as two ships descended from opposite directions. The Fortune's Folly touched down on the eastern landing pad with practiced precision, while the Azure Shadow gracefully settled on the western approach. Nathan emerged from his ship, thermal scanner in hand. The humid air clung to his skin as he surveyed the ancient structure before him. Massive stone columns, wrapped in bioluminescent vines, flanked a towering entrance carved with symbols that seemed to shift in the fading light. "Impressive, isn't it?" Gina's voice carried across the courtyard. She stood at her own entrance, her blue skin almost glowing in the temple's ethereal light. Though I expected something more grandiose for a legendary site. The real treasures are always hidden beneath the surface, Nathan called back, trying not to notice how the evening breeze played with her hair. Care to make this interesting? Gina's melodic laugh echoed off the stone walls. What did you have in mind, human? First one to reach the central chamber gets exclusive rights to the primary artifact. He patted his utility belt. Loser has to settle for secondary finds. Deal, she agreed, her violet eyes sparkling with challenge. But no sabotage this time. I haven't forgotten about the Martian caves incident. Nathan grinned. That was a legitimate tactical advantage. You locked me in a supply closet. You picked the lock in under 2 minutes. I'd call that a compliment to your skills. Their banter was interrupted by a low rumble from within the temple. Both entrances began to illuminate, ancient mechanisms whirring to life after millennia of dormancy. Race you to the center, Gina suggested, already moving toward her entrance. You're on. Beautiful. They plunged into their respective corridors simultaneously. Nathan's path immediately split into 3 branches. His scanner revealed recent energy signatures in the rightmost tunnel. Evia, you getting readings from inside? Affirmative, Captain. The temple's power systems are active but unstable. I'm also detecting significant movement in the local wildlife. As if on cue, a screech echoed through the corridor. Nathan spun around to see a pack of crystalline creatures, like wolves made of living diamond, emerging from the shadows. Their faceted bodies reflected his flashlight in dazzling, disorienting patterns. Gina, he called over the comm. Please tell me you're not seeing what I'm seeing. If you mean the gorgeous but deadly crystal carnivores, then yes. Her breath was slightly labored, suggesting she was running. The legends mentioned guardian beasts, but I expected something more organic. Nathan fired a warning shot from his pulse pistol, the energy blast scattering the pack temporarily. He used the opportunity to sprint deeper into the temple, vaulting over fallen pillars and sliding under partially closed security doors. Having fun yet? He asked, hearing Gina's own weapons fire through the comm. Oh, absolutely, she replied. Nothing like mortal danger to get the blood pumping. Speaking of which, you might want to pick up the pace. I think I see the central chamber ahead. Nathan cursed under his breath and increased his speed. The corridor opened into a vast circular room with a domed ceiling that seemed to capture and amplify the bioluminescent light. Gina emerged from her tunnel exactly opposite him, her hair slightly disheveled but otherwise looking unfairly composed. Tai, she suggested, holstering her weapon. I was clearly here first. In your dreams, human. They approached the center of the room, where a pedestal rose from the floor. Ancient text scrolled across its surface, accompanied by a holographic display of what appeared to be star charts. This can't be right, Gina muttered, studying the symbols. These coordinates, they're impossible. Nathan moved closer, close enough to catch the subtle floral scent that always seemed to surround her. Why impossible? Because they point to... She was cut off by a sudden tremor that shook the entire chamber. The floor began to shift, sections dropping away to reveal a labyrinth of mechanical defenses below. Move! Nathan grabbed Gina's arm, pulling her back as the pedestal sank into the floor. They ran for the nearest solid ground, but the collapse was spreading faster than they could retreat. The exits are sealing, Gina shouted, pointing to the heavy stone doors sliding into place. They reached a stable platform, but it was rapidly becoming an island in a sea of activated defense mechanisms. Laser grids, pressure plates, and what appeared to be some form of quantum destabilization field filled the space below. Well, Nathan said, noting how they were now forced to stand very close together on the limited safe space, this is cozy. Gina turned to face him, their bodies inches apart. I hope you have a brilliant plan, because I'd rather not die in this temple, especially not with you. You wound me, he replied, scanning their surroundings, and here I thought we were having a moment. The moment will be significantly shorter if we don't figure a way out of this trap. Nathan studied the pattern of the defense grid below. See how the laser patterns repeat every 12 seconds? There's a path through, but it would require perfect timing. And he trailed off, realizing what it meant. Gina finished his thought. We'd have to move in perfect sync. Together, their eyes met, and for a moment, the danger around them seemed to fade into the background. Nathan became acutely aware of how her hand had come to rest on his chest for balance. and how her breathing had synchronized with his own. Together then, he agreed, trying to ignore the way his pulse quickened at her proximity. Ready to trust me? A small smile played at the corners of her mouth. Don't make me regret this, human. The defense grid hummed menacingly beneath them as Nathan and Gina studied the pattern of deadly lasers and quantum fields. Their small platform continued to shrink, forcing them closer together with each passing moment. The pattern shifts every 12 seconds, Nathan observed, his arm instinctively wrapping around Gina's waist as another section of their platform disappeared. But there's a 3-second window where the fields align. Gina's skin felt cool against his, her natural bioluminescence casting a soft blue glow between them. And in those 3 seconds, we need to move perfectly in sync or become very attractive space dust. You already are very attractive space dust, Nathan quipped, earning an eye roll that couldn't quite hide her smile. Focus, human. How do we time this? Nathan pulled a small device from his belt. Remember that chronometric synchronizer I borrowed from the temporal archives? You mean the one you stole right from under my nose? Gina's fingers traced the device's edge, brushing against his hand. I'm still annoyed about that. Would it help if I said I was planning to give it to you for your birthday? You don't know when my birthday is. Third lunar cycle of the Centaurian calendar, he replied without hesitation. You mentioned it during the Neptunian heist, right before you shot me. Gina stared at him, surprise evident in her violet eyes. You remember that? I remember everything about you, Nathan admitted, then quickly added, strictly for professional reasons, of course. Know thy enemy and all that. Of course, she echoed, but her tone suggested she didn't believe him any more than he believed himself. The synchronizer beeped, indicating the next window approaching. Nathan activated it, creating a temporal bubble around them that would help them move in perfect synchronization. Ready? He asked, positioning himself behind her, his hands on her hips to guide their movement. Just don't let go, Gina whispered, and for once, there was no teasing in her voice. They moved as one through the deadly maze, their bodies pressed together as they navigated each precise step. The temporal bubble made their movements fluid, but the intimate proximity was affecting them both in ways the device couldn't control. Left, Nathan murmured against her ear. Now right. Hold. They froze as a quantum field passed inches from them. Gina's back was pressed against his chest and he could feel her heart racing, or maybe it was his own. You're trembling, she observed softly. Adrenaline, he lied. Liar. They reached a larger platform that seemed more stable than the others. Ancient control panels lined its edges, their surfaces still actively displaying data in a language neither of them recognized. We need to disable the security system, Gina said, reluctantly stepping away from him to examine the panels. But this technology, it's unlike anything I've seen. Nathan joined her, noticing how the symbols seemed to shift and change as they watched. It's responding to our presence. Look, the patterns change when we move closer together. Testing his theory, they stepped closer to each other. The symbols aligned differently, forming new configurations. It's not just a security system, Gina realized. It's a test. A test of what? Trust. She turned to face him, their faces inches apart. The temple's defenses didn't activate because we triggered them. They activated because we were competing instead of cooperating. Nathan processed this, remembering their earlier race through to the temple. So all this time, we've been doing exactly what the temple's designers expected. They built this place to force collaboration. Gina's hand found his, intertwining their fingers. The system won't deactivate until we prove we can work together completely. The control panel pulsed with new energy as their hands joined. Nathan looked down at their interlocked fingers, then back at her face. You know what this means? That we have to trust each other entirely? Her free hand came to rest on his chest, right over his heart. That's a dangerous proposition, human. I'm a dangerous man, he replied, his voice low. Prove it. Gina's eyes held a challenge. Tell me something you've never told anyone else. Something true. Nathan hesitated, then decided that if they were testing trust, he might as well go all in. Remember the Martian caves? When I locked you in that supply closet, how could I forget? I didn't do it to slow you down. I did it because I needed 2 minutes to compose myself after seeing you in that environmental suit. Gina's eyes widened slightly. That tight, transparent one? That's the one. Nathan felt his face heat up. Your turn. Fair's fair. She bit her lower lip, considering. The Neptunian heist. I didn't actually need to shoot you. I knew it. She looked away, her blue skin darkening in what he realized was a blush. I needed an excuse to tend to your wound afterward. The control panel's light intensified, bathing them in a soft glow. Around them, the defense grid began to power down, sections of the floor rising back into place. It's working, Nathan observed, though neither of them moved apart. The temple's accepting our trust fall? Is that what we're calling this? Gina's thumb traced circles on his chest. Because it feels like something else entirely. The last of the defense systems deactivated, leaving them standing in the restored chamber. The pedestal rose again from the floor, but this time, instead of star charts, it displayed a different set of coordinates and a message. Only together can the greatest treasures be found, Gina read aloud. Well, that's not subtle at all. Nathan laughed, but his hand remained entwined with hers. So, what now? Now, Gina said, stepping even closer. We have a choice to make. We can go back to being rivals or her free hand slid up to his neck, pulling him down slightly. Or we can admit that this competition between us has always been about something else entirely. The temple's inner chamber had grown quiet, save for the soft hum of ancient technology and their synchronized breathing. Nathan and Gina stood before the pedestal, studying the new coordinates while acutely aware of their still-joined hands. These coordinates, Nathan mused, they're pointing to the Crimson Nebula sector. That's unexplored territory. Gina nodded, her thumb absently caressing his palm. The radiation storms make it nearly impossible to navigate. Nearly? You thinking what I'm thinking? That we could combine your ship's advanced shielding with my navigation systems? She turned to face him, violet eyes sparkling. It would work. Together, we could reach it. The word together hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning. Nathan found himself studying her face, noting how the temple's bioluminescent light played across her features. We should probably make camp for the night, he suggested, his voice rougher than intended. The storms outside are getting worse, and we need to plan our approach. Agreed. Gina released his hand to access her wrist computer, but stayed close. EVA status report on the Fortune's Folly. Ship's systems are secure, Captain Reacher, the AI responded. However, the atmospheric disturbance will prevent safe departure for approximately 12 standard hours. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You're still connected to my ship's AI? From the Martian Caves incident, Gina admitted with a mischievous smile. I may have done more than just pick that lock. Minx! They set up camp in a protected alcove, using supplies from their emergency packs. Nathan activated portable lighting, while Gina established a security perimeter. Their movements were fluid, complementary, as if they'd been working together for years instead of hours. You know, Gina said, watching him unpack equipment, for a human, you're surprisingly adaptable. Most species take cycles to adjust to new partnerships. Is that what we're calling this? Nathan asked, removing his jacket as the chamber's temperature regulated. A partnership. What would you call it? Before he could answer, the temple's systems activated again, projecting a holographic map of the Crimson Nebula. Nathan moved to study it, his bare torso gleaming in the mixed light of their camp and the ancient technology. These energy signatures, he muttered, leaning over one of the ancient tech tables. They're unlike anything I've seen before. He became so absorbed in the data that he didn't notice Gina's approach until he felt her presence behind him. When he turned, she was leaning against the table in a pose that made his breath catch. This is your only chance, human male, she declared, her voice both playful and intense. Act now or regret forever. Time seemed to freeze as Nathan took in the scene before him. The way her corset caught the light, the knowing look in her eyes, the slight smile playing at her lips. He realized with sudden clarity that this moment had been building since their first meeting years ago. No more regrets, he murmured, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was electric, literally, her natural bioluminescence creating tiny sparks where their lips met. Nathan pulled back slightly, startled, but Gina's laugh was warm and inviting. That's normal, she assured him, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. My species, we glow brighter when we're excited. Indeed, her skin was emanating a stronger blue light, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. Nathan found it mesmerizing. "You're beautiful," he whispered, meaning it more than any words he'd ever spoken. What followed was a night of discovery, of learning each other in ways their years of rivalry had only hinted at. They found that their bodies fit together as perfectly as their minds did, that their differences only enhanced their connection. Later, as they lay together on their makeshift bed, Gina's head resting on his chest, Nathan traced the luminescent patterns on her skin. "I should have done this years ago," he admitted. "We weren't ready years ago," Gina replied, her fingers drawing lazy circles on his abdomen. "We needed all that time. The competition, the chase, the near misses, it made us who we are now." "And who are we now?" She propped herself up on an elbow, her hair cascading over them both like a cobalt waterfall. "Partners, in every way that matters." The temple systems hummed in apparent approval, the coordinates for the Crimson Nebula glowing brighter. "You realize," Nathan said, tucking a strand of hair behind her pointed ear, "that this changes everything about how we work." "It makes us better," Gina stated confidently. "Think about it. We've always been strongest when we work together, even as rivals. Now?" Her smile turned wicked. "We'll be unstoppable." Nathan pulled her down for another kiss, marveling at how right this felt. "The greatest treasures can only be found together," he quoted the temple's message. Speaking of treasures, Gina murmured against his lips, "We should probably start planning our approach to those coordinates." "Probably," he agreed, making no move to get up. "Or we could take advantage of those 12 hours EVA mentioned." Gina's answering smile was all the response he needed. The twin suns rose over the temple ruins as Nathan and Gina prepared their ships for departure. The storm had cleared, leaving behind a crystalline morning that seemed to mirror their newfound clarity. "EVA," Nathan called out as he worked on connecting the ship's systems, "begin integration protocol with the Azure Shadows navigation matrix." "Integration initiated, Captain," EVA responded, "though I should note that Miss Athara's Ekinon eye seems rather protective of her algorithms." Gina laughed from where she was adjusting her ship's shield harmonics. "That's because Area knows your reputation with foreign systems, EVA." "I have no idea what you're implying," the AI replied primly. Nathan wiped his brow, admiring how Gina's natural glow seemed brighter in the morning light. "Playing nice with others isn't exactly our strong suit, is it?" "Wasn't," Gina corrected, sauntering over to inspect his work. She placed a hand on his bare shoulder, sending pleasant tingles down his spine. Things change. The previous night had changed everything, yet somehow nothing at all. Their banter remained, but now it carried an undercurrent of intimate knowledge, of shared secrets and tender moments. "Shield synchronization complete," Arya announced from the Azure Shadow. "Though I must say, EVA's approach to power distribution is rather human. Is that an insult or a compliment?" Nathan asked, amused. "Both," both AIs replied simultaneously. As they finished the preparations, Nathan caught Gina studying the temple's final data readout. "Having second thoughts?" "About the Crimson Nebula?" "No." She turned to face him, her violet eyes serious. "About us?" "Also number big, but I am thinking about something." "Share with the class?" "Human-Etherian relationships are rare," she said, her fingers absently tracing the patterns on his chest. "Not impossible, obviously, but complex." Nathan caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. "I like complex." "Clearly," she smirked, "but there's something you should know. My species, when we form deep connections, they become physical manifestations. The bioluminescence you've noticed, it's already starting to respond to your presence." Indeed, where their skin touched, her natural glow pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat. "Is that dangerous?" "Only to my reputation as an independent operator," she teased, but her eyes held a deeper emotion. "It means I'm literally lighting up for you, Nathan Reacher. My body is choosing you, whether my mind wants to be practical about it or not." The vulnerability in her admission touched something deep within him. "Then we'll be impractical together." Their kiss was interrupted by EVA's pointed throat-clearing sound. "Ships are ready for launch, captains. Though I do enjoy watching humans attempt to mate, we have a schedule to keep." "EVI? What?" "I've been studying human mating rituals since you installed me." Fascinating stuff. Gina burst out laughing at Nathan's mortified expression. Oh, I'm going to enjoy having her around. They boarded the Fortune's Folly together, having decided to leave the Azure Shadow in a stable orbit as backup. The ship's interior felt different with Gina aboard. Warmer, more alive. She immediately began programming the navigation coordinates while Nathan initiated launch sequences. The Crimson Nebula's radiation will start affecting systems about 6 hours in, she reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. That's when we'll need both ships' combined shielding. And that's assuming we don't run into any unfriendly attention, Nathan added, settling into the pilot's seat. The nebula's been off limits for a reason. Gina slid into the co-pilot's chair, her leg brushing against his. Afraid? Terrified, he admitted with a grin. But in a good way. The ship lifted off smoothly, breaking through the atmosphere in a controlled burn. As they achieved orbit, the Azure Shadow fell into formation beside them, its systems linking seamlessly with theirs. You know, Gina mused as they set course for the nebula, this is the first time we've actually flown together instead of chasing each other. Having regrets? She reached over, her hand finding his on the controls. Not a single one. The next few hours passed in comfortable efficiency, their years of individual expertise melding into an impressive collaborative force. They traded stories of past adventures, filling in the gaps of times they'd nearly crossed paths or deliberately avoided each other. Remember the Plutonian vaults? Gina asked as they shared a meal in the ship's small galley. I always wondered how you got out of there. Nathan choked slightly on his drink. Would you believe I didn't? What? I spent 3 days hiding in the ventilation system, watching you search for me. He shrugged at her astonished expression. I was too busy admiring your determination to think about escaping. You impossible man, she said fondly, her skin pulsing with that now familiar glow. We wasted so much time. Not wasted, he corrected, pulling her onto his lap. Preparation, training, getting ready for this. Their moment was interrupted by EVA's urgent alert. Radiation levels increasing ahead of schedule. Nebula boundary approaching. They rushed back to the bridge, professionalism taking over, despite their desire to continue exploring this new aspect of their relationship. The view screen showed the massive crimson clouds looming before them, shot through with veins of dangerous energy. Ready to make history? Nathan asked, his hands steady on the controls. Gina's answering smile was brilliant. With you? Always. The Crimson Nebula lived up to its reputation. Massive clouds of scarlet gas swirled around the Fortune's Folly, while ribbons of radiation danced across the shields in mesmerizing patterns. Nathan and Gina worked in seamless coordination at the helm, their movements synchronized as if they'd been partners for years. Shield harmonics dropping to 60%, EVA announced. The radiation is more intense than our initial reading suggested. Gina's fingers flew across the navigation console, her skin glowing brighter with concentration. The Azure Shadow's backup systems are compensating, but we're burning through power faster than expected. We need to find shelter until the next radiation wave passes, Nathan said, scanning the sensor readings. There, that asteroid field might provide enough cover. As they maneuvered through the field, their combined expertise showed its worth. Nathan's piloting skills complemented Gina's navigational instincts perfectly, allowing them to thread through gaps that would have been impossible for either of them alone. You know, Gina commented as they settled into a relatively stable position, watching you handle those controls is surprisingly attractive. Nathan grinned without taking his eyes off the readouts. Only surprisingly? Well, I used to find it irritating how good you were at everything. Now it's inspiring. The ship shuddered as another radiation wave hit their shields. Warning lights flashed across the console, and Gina's glow dimmed momentarily in response to the power fluctuation. Are you all right? Nathan asked, noting her reaction. My species is sensitive to energy fields, she explained, steadying herself. It's usually an advantage, but in here, she gestured at the nebula surrounding them. It's a bit overwhelming. Nathan reached over, taking her hand. Where their skin met, her natural luminescence strengthened, pushing back against the nebula's influence. Better? Much, she breathed, violet eyes meeting his. You're grounding me somehow. I've never experienced anything like it. EVA, status report? Shields holding at 45%. The radiation wave will pass in approximately 6 hours. However, ship systems are showing unusual energy patterns. The interaction between human and Etherian biology appears to be creating a localized stabilizing effect. Gina looked thoughtful. That's why the temple's test focused on cooperation. It wasn't just about trust, it was about biological compatibility. You mean we're literally better together? Nathan asked, amused. Apparently, human physiology has some unique properties that complement Etherian energy patterns. She stood, pulling him up with her. We should test this theory. For scientific purposes, of course. Of course, he agreed solemnly, though his eyes danced with a mischief. Purely professional research. They retreated to the captain's quarters, where the radiation's effects were less pronounced. As they explored this new aspect of their connection, they discovered that their physical intimacy indeed created a bubble of stability around them, their combined energy patterns harmonizing with and strengthening each other. Later, as they lay entwined, Gina's bioluminescence painted patterns across their skin. Your species never ceases to amaze me, she murmured. You're so young in galactic terms, yet you possess qualities that even the oldest races don't understand. Like what? Like this ability to adapt, to complement other species in ways that shouldn't be possible. Her fingers traced the outline of his jaw. The universe is vast and often hostile, yet humans just dive in headfirst, making connections, building bridges. It's remarkable. Nathan caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Maybe we're just too stubborn to know better. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. Their moment was interrupted by EVA's urgent announcement. Captains, the radiation wave is shifting course. We have approximately 20 minutes before our current position becomes untenable. They sprang into action, their newly strengthened connection evident in how smoothly they worked together. As they prepared the ship for emergency maneuvers, Gina's glow pulsed in sync with the ship's systems, providing instant feedback on power fluctuations. The Azure Shadow's shields are failing, Arya reported. Attempting to reroute power? No, Gina said suddenly. Don't fight it. Nathan, remember how our energy patterns stabilized each other? He caught on immediately. EVA, prepare to synchronize shield harmonics with the Azure Shadow. Match the frequency to Gina's bioluminescence pattern. That's highly unorthodox, Captain, EVA protested. Welcome to working with humans, Gina grinned, placing her hands on the console. Her natural glow intensified, spreading through the ship's systems like liquid light. Nathan placed his hands over hers and the effect amplified dramatically. The shields of both ships began to pulse in harmony, creating a bubble of stable space around them that pushed back against the nebula's chaos. It's working, EVO announced, surprise evident in her artificial voice. Shield strength increasing to 70%, 80, 90. Now that's what I call teamwork, Nathan said, pulling Gina close as they watched the radiation wave pass harmlessly around their synchronized shields. She turned in his embrace, her eyes bright with excitement and something deeper. You impossible, brilliant human! You're going to change everything I thought I knew about the universe, aren't you? That's the plan, he replied, sealing the promise with a kiss. And the synchronized energy field surrounding their ships had an unexpected effect on the nebula's crimson clouds. Where before there had been only chaotic swirls of radiation, now distinct patterns emerged, like pathways through the cosmic storm. EVA, are you seeing this? Nathan asked, studying the sensor readings. Affirmative. The interaction between your combined biological signatures and the nebula's radiation is creating stable corridors of traversable space. Gina leaned forward, her natural glow pulsing with excitement. It's like the nebula is responding to us. Arya, analyze these energy patterns. The pathways appear to lead deeper into the nebula, Arya reported. They correlate with the coordinates from the temple. As they followed these newly revealed routes, Nathan noticed something different about Gina's bioluminescence. The usual azure tones now contained threads of gold, creating mesmerizing patterns across her skin. Your glow is changing, he observed, reaching out to trace one of the golden lines on her arm. Gina examined herself with wonder. This is unprecedented. Etherian biology can be influenced by strong emotional bonds. But this level of physical adaptation... She met his eyes. You're literally changing my cellular structure, Nathan. Is that dangerous? No, she smiled, taking his hand. It's extraordinary. My people have encountered countless species, but we've never achieved this level of biological harmony with any of them. Their moment was interrupted by a sudden surge in the ship's power readings. The nebula's radiation had intensified, but instead of threatening their shields, it seemed to be feeding them energy. Fascinating, EVA commented. The nebula appears to be nurturing your connection. Over the next several days, as they navigated deeper into the Crimson Nebula, the changes in Gina became more pronounced. Her energy patterns grew stronger, more intertwined with both the ship's systems and Nathan's own biorhythms. Their nights together became more than just passion. They were a fusion of energies that left both of them transformed. One morning, as they lay in their quarters watching the nebula's light play across the ceiling, Gina made a discovery that would change everything. "Nathan," she whispered, her hand pressed against her abdomen, where her glow pulsed with a new, distinct pattern. I think we've created something impossible." He propped himself up on an elbow, noting the mixture of awe and uncertainty in her voice. "What do you mean?" "My species. We can only conceive with perfectly compatible genetic patterns. It's why our population is so carefully controlled. But this," she guided his hand to where the golden light swirled beneath her skin. "This is a new life. Our child." Nathan felt the pulse of energy under his palm, strong and steady. "But how? Because you're human?" She laughed softly. "Your species' greatest strength is making the impossible possible. You adapt, you overcome, you rewrite the rules of what should and shouldn't work." He pulled her close, marveling at how the nebula's light seemed to dance in celebration around them. "Are you okay with this? It's not exactly what we planned when we started this treasure hunt." "I think," Gina said thoughtfully, "that this is the greatest treasure we could have found." Her eyes sparkled with mischief. "Though I still intend to claim whatever's waiting for us at those coordinates." Their discussion was cut short by Aria's alert. "Captains, we're approaching significant anomaly. The nebula appears to be parting." They rushed to the bridge, still adjusting their clothes to find a spectacular sight. The crimson clouds were indeed separating, revealing a massive structure floating in a pocket of clear space. It appeared to be a station of some kind, its architecture a blend of organic curves and crystalline surfaces that caught and reflected the nebula's light. Energy signatures matched the temple's technology, EVA reported, but they're orders of magnitude stronger. "Look at those docking ports," Gina pointed out. "They're designed for ships of different configurations. This wasn't built by a single species." Nathan studied the structure, noting how it seemed to pulse in rhythm with their shields. "It's responding to us, just like the nebula did. The ultimate testament to cooperation between species," Gina mused, her hand unconsciously moving to her abdomen. "Maybe that's what this was all about, proving that the greatest achievements come from bringing different peoples together." "Speaking of bringing things together," Nathan said, pulling her into his arms, "I think we've proven that point pretty thoroughly." Her answering kiss was electric. Literally, sparks of golden light danced between them, making the ship's systems hum in harmony. "EVA," Nathan called out without breaking away from Gina. "Begin docking procedures." "Of course, Captain, though I feel compelled to remind you that the bridge is not the appropriate location for continued celebration of your biological compatibility." Gina laughed against his lips. "She has a point. We should save our energy for exploring that station." "Always the professional," he teased. "Not always," she replied with a wicked smile. "But right now, we have a mystery to solve and a treasure to claim. After that," her glow intensified suggestively, "we can discuss the future. All three of us." The ancient station's docking clamps secured both ships with a resonating hum that matched the pulse of Gina's bioluminescence. As they prepared to board, Nathan noticed how the station's crystalline surfaces seemed to respond to their presence, shifting from deep crimson to a harmonious blend of azure and gold. "EVA, status report on external communications?" Nathan asked, checking his gear. "The nebula's radiation still blocks conventional signals," the AI replied. "However, I'm detecting quantum entanglement channels built into the station structure. They appear to be activating in response to your combined energy signatures." Gina adjusted her corset, which now seemed to shimmer with the same golden threads that marked her changing biology. "Someone's going to notice that." The Ethereum Science Council monitors all quantum communications in this sector. Having second thoughts? Nathan asked, pulling her close. About us? Never. She traced the line of his jaw with a finger that left trails of light in its wake. About dealing with the bureaucratic nightmare headed our way? Maybe a little. The station's main chamber took their breath away. Vast windows revealed the nebula's dance, while holographic displays activated around them, showing data in dozens of languages. At the chamber's center stood a pillar of pure energy, its patterns matching the golden swirls beneath Gina's skin. It's a research station, Gina realized, studying the displays, dedicated to studying interspecies relationships, particularly between energy-sensitive races and humans. Nathan whistled low. How long has this been here? According to these readings, over 10,000 years. She turned to him, violet eyes wide. Nathan, we're not the first. There have been others like us throughout history, but never with these results. Before he could respond, the quantum channels hummed to life. Multiple communications arrived simultaneously, from the Ethereum Science Council, the Human Exploration Corps, and several other interested parties. Well, Nathan sighed, that didn't take long. The next few hours were a blur of explanations and negotiations. The Ethereum Council was particularly interested in Gina's pregnancy, while the Human Exploration Corps seemed more focused on the station's technological implications. Through it all, Nathan and Gina maintained physical contact, their energy patterns strengthening each other. This is unprecedented, the Ethereum chief scientist declared via hologram. A viable human-Ethereum hybrid should be impossible, yet your cellular structures have achieved perfect harmony. Humans do have a way of making the impossible possible, Gina replied proudly, her fingers intertwined with Nathan's. The human core representative leaned forward. The real question is, what happens now? Nathan felt Gina tense beside him. This was the moment they'd been dreading. The possibility that their discovery would lead to separation, to becoming test subjects rather than partners. But Nathan Reacher hadn't become the galaxy's most successful treasure hunter by playing by others' rules. What happens now, he announced, pulling Gina closer, is that we're getting married, both human and Ethereum ceremonies. Then we're going to continue exploring this station and others like it, together. You can study our findings, but we remain free agents. The representatives erupted in protests and counter-proposals, but fell silent when Gina's glow suddenly intensified, filling the chamber with brilliant light. The energy pillar responded, creating a display of all the human Ethereum pairs throughout history who had found their way to this station. This facility wasn't built to control or study us like specimens, Gina declared. It was built to celebrate these connections. To prove that the greatest achievements in the galaxy come not from separation, but from union. The Ethereum Council members' own bioluminescence flickered in response to her words. The human representatives looked thoughtful. Perhaps, Gensha-san sucks, the chief scientist said slowly. We could establish a collaborative research initiative, with you two as independent consultants, of course, and the station as a neutral zone for future interspecies. Una couples, the human core added. Hours later, after the negotiations were complete and the communications ended, Nathan and Gina stood alone before the massive windows. The nebula had cleared further, creating a permanent safe zone around the station. So, Nathan said, pulling her into his arms, was it worth it, that night in the temple when you told me it was my only chance? Gina's laugh was like starlight. I knew even then that you were different, that we could be something extraordinary together. Her hand guided his to her abdomen, where their child's energy pulsed strong and steady. Though I didn't expect quite this level of extraordinary. Any regrets? Just one, she murmured, pressing closer. That we wasted so much time competing when we could have been doing this. Their kiss was electric, sending ripples through the station's energy field. The golden threads in Gina's bioluminescence brightened, weaving patterns that matched the nebula's dance outside. You know, Nathan said between kisses, we still haven't properly explored the living quarters section of this station. Always the treasure hunter, Gina teased, but her eyes sparkled with promise. What do you hope to find there? Oh, I already found my greatest treasure, he replied, lifting her into his arms. But I'm thinking we should conduct some thorough research. For science, of course. Of course, she agreed solemnly, though her glow pulsed with anticipation. We have a duty to future human Ethereum couples, after all. As they made their way through the station's crystalline corridors, their laughter echoing off ancient walls that had waited millennia for just such a union, both knew that this was only the beginning of their story. The universe was vast, full of mysteries waiting to be discovered, treasures to be found, and moments to be shared. And they would face it all together, their love lighting the way through whatever adventures awaited them.